Hi everyone, we're going to convert decimals to fractions and percents. So this first decimal here is 0.27. We read this as 27 hundredths. So it's really 27 out of 100. And that would be a fraction that represents this decimal. Now to make it a percent, we simply take the decimal and multiply by 100 and we get 27%. Again, this is equivalent because percents are out of 100, so that would be 27 out of 100, which is obviously what we just had right there. So there's our percent, and there is a fraction that represents this situation. Now, for any fraction, you can always write an equivalent one. You could double the numerator and the denominator here and get 54 out of 200. And then you could keep scaling it up or down to get other equivalent fractions, but we only really need one to satisfy this situation. So that's one fraction that works, 27 out of 100. For the next one here, to make it a percent, we could do that first. We could do just times 100, and that would be 107%. And then if we know it's 107%, we could say, well, that's out of 100. So it's going to be 107 out of 100, and that's how you can get the fraction given a percent. You could go in that direction as well. Or you could think of 1.07 as 1 7 hundredths, which is a mixed number, which you can make into one improper fraction the same way as we have right down here, 107 over 100. For the next one here, this would be 137 thousandths as a fraction if you were to write that first. That would be our fraction to represent this. And then again, to make it into a percent, simply do times 100 to the decimal. You get 13.7%. No big deal. That would be 13.7 out of 100, which of course is equivalent to what we have up above. 137 thousandths is the same as 13.7 hundredths. For our last one, it's very similar. We can do times 100 first to get our percent, 84.1%. And again, this is 841 thousandths. So that would be a fraction that represents this. But of course, you could write it as 84.1 over 100 if you had the fraction first. Typically, though, we like to avoid fractions with decimals in them. So that one might make a little bit more sense up top to work with. But they're all equivalent forms. And that's how we convert decimals to fractions and percents.